Brunswick County's gone through a lot of transitions through the years. I remember when I got in office in '08, we had 50% of the people that moved here had children, and 50% of the folks that lived here didn't have children. And now almost 4,300 people per year come into this county to call it home. But the thing is, only about 150 to maybe 200 kids are in our public schools, a net gain. So that gets to see how the demographics shift and how the playing field changes a good bit. I'm Marty Cook, and I've been a commissioner here, like I say, for 12 years. And when I was there, initially they had the thing called Brunswick Tomorrow, which was founded in about 2004. And it was a process similar to what we're doing here with the Brunswick Blueprint. We're trying to get an idea of where we are from a snapshot perspective and where we're growing as a demographic and how to be able to plan for change. You know, I said that's one of the biggest issues we have is figuring out, you know, how to stay ahead of the curve with respect to change. Because the thing is, if you build a waste treatment plant or any of your infrastructure, your law enforcement, population centers, anything else like that, and you don't have factored in the aspect of growth, in the case with us being the 7th fastest growing county in the country, it's a shame because the problem is you get locked in. So we have some really good people in the room, and you know, one is Michael Norton. Michael's going to be able to tell you a lot about what's going on. Kirsty, are you going to be doing some of this as well?
Yeah, about here.
Okay, well anyway, but you know, it's interesting, you know, you probably drove up here in a lot of rain. You know, a tropical storm, obviously we all do. We've had about 4 inches of rain the past 24 hours. If you were in Fort Lauderdale, you realize that in Fort Lauderdale, if they didn't have remediation for the water that they had, they'd be in water, they'd be in flooding situations similar to what we have right here for 11 months out of the year. But they stepped up and they made planning to whereas they could do certain things like that. We do the same thing. We've got professionals, we've got engineers, we've got people that really know their stuff to be able to come up with it. But we need your input as a member of the public to be able to come up and say, this is what I see and this is what I'd like to see with respect to it. Because this is what we can use as a living document moving forward to be able to plan for a better tomorrow. And people say that a lot of times, and a lot of times it's rhetoric and we don't mean it, but the truth is we sincerely do mean it. So if you're seeing us online, if you're here in public, whatever like that, we do need your input. So thank you, and without any further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Michael Norton, and I'm going to put my mask back on, okay? So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cook. Michael Norton with McGill Associates, also have Jim Ford with McGill Associates, Meg Neelan with Neelan Planning. We're excited to be consultants assisting the county in this effort. And Kirsty Dixon and Aaron Perkins, both county directors, are the county management and project management staff that supports them are key to this process. And those of you that have visited the website thus far, you've seen their contact information. We'll encourage you, and you'll hear this throughout this evening, as Commissioner Cook mentioned, your involvement is critical. It really is key for us to hear what each of you as community residents, members, business owners, developers, visitors, we want to hear from you in this process, because everything that's taking place affects you all. The vision for the future really impacts us all. So you'll hear that a few times tonight, ways to get engaged. I would encourage you, if you have any questions about that, please don't leave here with those questions. And also take that input with you to others. Be committed to share it to with at least half a dozen, if not a few hundred, as you are able to over the next couple of months. You'll hear about the website and surveys and ways of doing that. Turn it over to Meg, and as Meg comes up, she's going to be describing some of those things that we have been working on to gather data as one part of this component. A lot of the information exists. Commissioner Cook mentioned a similar process about a decade ago. Obviously, that information, along with numerous other studies by other entities and regulatory folks, are part of this process, focus groups, and various ways of gathering information. She's going to share with you, as is Jim, some of that information that we are seeing thus far and what it means for us. And just as importantly, use that as a way of knowing the type of information that we're digesting, and help us synthesize that, help us improve that data by telling us what you know as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us at this meeting. We're happy that some folks could come out given the weather and our restrictions with COVID-19. So we're going to take you through a brief presentation, as Michael said, on a little bit of the data that we're uncovering, and some of it that will be key aspects of the analysis that we're doing at this stage of the project, and will, in combination with other information we're collecting, help us start to formulate a plan for the future of Brunswick County. So this presentation will touch on the process so you can see how it unfolds and what opportunities there are for participation, but also more time spent on Brunswick today. What are we seeing? It's just the highlights. This is not comprehensive at this stage. And we want to save some time at the end of the presentation to have a discussion with all of you about some of the things that maybe are already on your mind, questions that you might have, ideas you want to share, and so on. So a little bit about the planning process. It's actually 2 projects in one. So we're simultaneously looking at a comprehensive land use plan and Parks and Recreation master plan. And the benefit of that, this is actually a really good thing to do these 2 things, because they really do have overlapping components to them, and when they can be developed together, they really can work in concert together and really serve the county for many, many years. So that's a really great thing that the county has decided to do. The process has about 4 phases, and we're well into the 2nd phase. We expect to wrap that up towards the end of this year and move into that 3rd phase when the plan really starts to take shape, or both plans really start to take shape. And so from there, we will be creating vision plans and matching those with recommendations, the how-to get things done, what's decided in the vision plan. And we will also then move into the 4th phase, where the final plan documents will be created. Some will be online, some will be hard copy printed, and they will take on different forms to appeal to the various audiences that need to see them, use them, and so on, and be implementers of the plan. We do have a survey going on that Jim's going to talk about. So you notice on the schedule there, we're targeting the beginning of January to close that survey. So we'd really like to get a lot of participation in that. Some of the milestones along the way, as I said, right now we're in the inventory and analysis stage, where we're looking at data, we're looking at trends, and we're weaving that in with the input that we're getting to start to identify those things that ultimately will shape the goals. And those goals are really important because we need them not only to create the plans, but they serve as guideposts to the county leaders. So going forward, there may be circumstances that arise that the plan doesn't specifically address. The leaders can look to that and make decisions based off those goals. But from that, we really can go forward with vision plans that are an expression of that framework, your land use pattern, plus the Parks and Recreation system within that development pattern, recommendations for how to get that done. Since we're looking 20 years out, you can imagine those recommendations may be a fairly lengthy list because it's short-term, long-term, and everything in between. But we also deliver an action plan. Because it's daunting, we want to zero in on the kinds of things that should be done in the near term, right out of the gate, right after the plan's adopted, and make some progress towards implementation, towards realizing those visions, and start to measure progress along the way to see if we're on the right path. And I already mentioned the final documents taking on various forms. We do have a community engagement process that's multifaceted, and Jim is going to explain that.
Thanks, Meg. So like Meg said, the community engagement process is multifaceted. The reason for that can be obvious. Here we are wearing our masks. We have COVID, right? Our traditional ways of reaching out to the public, we need to modify. So while we are making some, efforts to get out to the people and talk to people face to face, we also have focus group meetings that are virtual. And we are hosting the project website, which has resources on there from our survey. But what that website has on there is the place where you probably registered to attend this meeting. It's got that project schedule that explains to you the milestones, what Meg just went over. It's also got a place in there that, let's say you've taken that survey, but you had another great idea. There's a place in there for you to leave open-ended comments. So at any time, that's an unlimited space to put a concern, add a comment, and those all come to the team. So while we're focusing on that survey and all the data, and there's a lot of open-ended questions, that area for you to just leave any comment is very important. It's something that I encourage you to take advantage of. With the survey, just keep in mind that you're taking that survey, but there's people you lived with, there's people you go to church and school with or work with that should take that survey. So be our champions. Go out and spread the word that we want as much involvement as possible in order for us to be able to paint a clear picture as to what the people feel like are the needs and desires. We need to hear from everybody. So please do that for us. You've made a point to be here, and I applaud you for that. That just means that you're proactive, and you can be a good ambassador for us.
Jim was talking about.
So I checked the survey this morning. This has been going on for about 3 weeks or so. We've got close to 1,000 people that have taken the survey. Okay, those are individual IP addresses, so that's great news. This is just one example from just a few days ago. We had just a little over 700. The question at the top that has the largest area in green is highlighting interest and opportunities for improvement. What are people saying? Well, so far in the process, traffic and roads have highlighted as a big important area. I think we all knew that, right? So this helps us validate some of that information that we're getting. It's going to continue to change as the process goes on.
Okay, so just a little snapshot of the county today. We are looking at the entire county, including all 19 municipalities, which is a pretty high number. And 1,300 square miles, you've got that, but you also have about 10% of that area that's truly developed. Over 80% is devoted to agricultural uses, and I think that's a pretty interesting number for such a large geography. That's a big number, and you'll find out from Jim in a few minutes how that's growing. So it starts to give us a sense of exactly, how does the land lay out in here, and we can dive down into the details here. There are 5 municipalities that are participating in this process because they're due for that type of land use plan update. Others that are not participating, while they will be included in the areas that we're looking at, they don't need a land use plan because they probably have a new one or they're working on their own right now. So those 5 are participating. So a little bit about the population here and what's coming to Brunswick County. You have had a lot of population growth. So 94% jump in the last 20 years is a big one. So Brunswick County has been more than discovered. So with that growth, you also have a lot of folks coming in as seasonal population. So when you think about that growth that's coming and how the county population is going to grow, we're going to go over the 200,000 mark in 20 years. But when you factor in the seasonal population, both now and in the future, it grows by about 2.6 times what your regular full-time population is. So the county's serving a fairly large group of people. That season is broadening now as people figure out that they can work remotely and learn remotely. So, you're seeing people here for longer periods of time, longer stays. So it truly is a much bigger population than these numbers would reflect. Another thing about your population is, like the rest of the United States, it's an aging population. But unlike the United States, your median age is a lot higher than North Carolina or the US. So at 52.8, that's a lot higher. So a lot of folks have come here as retirees, and they've been aging here in the county, and you're still attracting retirees. So that'll continue to be a big number at the top of that graph. Most of the people are concentrated around your shorelines, of course, and in these communities that are oriented back towards Wilmington, so no surprise there. And a little bit about the place. When we do a study like this, we like to look at the existing development pattern, but one of the things that we look at is what we call development status. And we do that because we want to understand where can growth go, where can we support that development. And so we look at it from the standpoint of what's already developed that's not going to change. And what are the areas that are really protected, so they're not going to change either because they already have, for one reason or another, some protections on it. And then everything in between. And so on this map, you can see the areas in red are those developed areas, that 10% plus or minus, that's probably not going to change over. The investments there are what they're going to be. Other areas that you see there are the green. That's the protected open space. It might be parks, it might be federal lands, state lands, conservation easements, and so on. There's a very large gray area that's classified as undeveloped, and I will tell you that the agriculture falls within there, so it's not really undeveloped, but it's open land that could be subject to future development. And then the purple parcels, which I hope you can make out in and around those red areas, those are also developed parcels, but we consider them underdeveloped or underutilized because of the investment relative to the value of the land. And so when we think about land supply and where growth can go, some of those parcels may be on the receiving end of some of that development because they want to redevelop. But also the good news about that is they're right where the infrastructure is. So using that capacity that's there is a good thing. So we count that in the total area that we think about for future development. Your existing land use pattern, the tax office breaks it down in about 8 categories that you see reflected here. Some of the things are not surprising that you would see on this map: commercial, gravitating to the corridors, especially where the population centers are. So you see those red areas representing commercial in the county. If you look closely, you'd probably have to get closer, but the residential areas are all in and around there too in yellow. The colors that really stand out are the green, the open space, and the undeveloped. Again, there's agriculture in there. So, but one of the things that we looked at was we take that whole pattern and it looks like you've got all kinds of land for development, but we asked the question of what percentages of the land area are devoted to each of these uses. 71% is undeveloped, that includes the agriculture, but we also have 17% of your land area devoted to single-family residential development. And so notice also that the commercial development is 2% of your land area. And when you start to look at those numbers in terms of the tax base, that 17% of single-family residential represents 76% of your tax base. That's a big number. That 2% in commercial is 7% of your tax base. But what that says to us is you definitely have room to get more balance in your tax base, introduce a more residential, non-residential uses into your land use mix, and hopefully get some benefit from the tax revenue generation that could come off of that, as well as meeting community needs, right? So the property values, we always like to see where the highest values and lowest values and everything in between are kind of located. So it's where you would expect. We have higher property values out towards the coastline and towards Wilmington. And we're seeing a big jump in home values. So the chart you're seeing tracks home values, the median home values through 2018. And that one number is close to 200,000. Well, more recent data from the last couple of months is actually showing much higher numbers now. So you really have had a big jump in the last 2 years. And some of that is people deciding that because they can work anywhere, they're going to relocate to places with a high quality of life, and Brunswick County is one of those places. So now you're seeing median home values just over 300,000 and the average approaching 400,000. And it's those properties in the millions out at the coastline that are pulling those numbers up. The housing units by structure type, a lot of single-family detached homes within the community, so that's part of what characterizes the nature of development in this community. There are a lot of folks who are renting in the community, and they're renting single-family homes. But what's interesting is that the over 50% of the people who are renting in the county are spending more than 30% of their income on their housing costs, and that's a really big number. So it points to the idea that, you know, there's probably a need for more variety, more options, more choices within the community. We're also seeing that 38% of your housing units are unoccupied, which suggests that there's a strong second home and short-term rental market, which we all know is here, but it puts Brunswick County in the top among other North Carolina counties. You're right there in the top 5 or 10. That equates to a lot of tourism spending, folks coming down and spending a great deal of time. They're spending it on lodging, and they're also spending it on the dining, the entertainment, and those types of things. And so that's what we would expect them to be doing. But when we think about the full-time residents here, not everybody's shopping here. Their shopping needs aren't necessarily met in Brunswick County, but what you'll see in a few minutes, the commuting patterns, folks are leaving the county, a lot of folks are leaving the county every day. And so they're doing that shopping, those trips on the other end of their work trips. So that's where the money, the $330 million that's leaving the county, is being spent in other counties as people leave to go to work and seek other shopping. Most of the jobs are related to tourism. So you have a lot in retail trade, you have a lot in the food service and accommodations. Those are some of the lower wage jobs that are in the industries here. Even with that, your median household income is above that of the state. And a lot of that is with the incomes that are coming down here with the retirees. So they have a lot of disposable income that's bringing that number up. We think that will continue, that trend will continue up. As far as the workers go, you have almost 25,000 people who leave the county every day to go to work. Almost 18,000 are staying here and holding jobs within the county, and then almost 13,000 are coming into the county every day for jobs to have here. So one of the things that you would expect with those numbers is that the folks driving in are the ones who hold those tourism-related jobs, the food service, accommodations, and so on, because they have, the cost of living here is high enough that they really need to find housing elsewhere and drive in for those jobs. So it's a lot of in and out of the county, which is adding to your traffic on your roadways. You do have a lot of large employers in the county. This is one piece of your economic puzzle here. So you've got, you can see sort of those brackets of the number of folks that these companies are employing. But that's just one piece of it. You also have a lot of small businesses here, including the mom and pop shops that are, you know, part of your tourism industry, rely on the tourism industry. But one of the things that we've been hearing from folks is let's not forget about those small businesses. They are a critical piece of our economy, and we want them to grow and flourish and be viable here in Brunswick County. So it's not just about landing these big employers to create jobs here. They can come from small business. When we look out to 2026, you're going to see a lot of growth in the healthcare industry. Again, not surprising because with your population aging and more retirees moving in here, that creates a lot of demand for health services. So the key to that is attracting the professionals who need to deliver those services and helping them find housing and a good quality of life here. So you have to have those factors that make it attractive to move those professionals here. Also a lot with the construction industry, and the community colleges has been ramping up to deliver training in those areas. But the good thing about that is with the wages, you'll start to see a shift where some of those jobs that are being created are among some of the higher wages. I just mentioned education. Your educational attainment levels are going up. Folks are over the age of 25. A lot of them have bachelor's degrees and above. And again, that's with some of the retirees that are moving here. But Brunswick Community College is doing a terrific job. They were named #1 community college by smartassets.com. And one of the things that they're doing several things, but one of the things they're doing is strengthening their workforce training. And they've also offered a Brunswick Guarantee, which is terrific, allowing Brunswick County residents to go to school tuition-free, cost-free, to be able to train them in the jobs that the employers who are here want their workforce to have, and also offering some of those certification programs. So trying to keep some of those folks here in the county after they go through these programs is really important. They also have an incubator. I feel like I'm doing a commercial for Brunswick Community College, but it is a tremendous asset that this county has, that alignment with the public schools and alignment with the employers who are here and coming can really start to move the needle when it comes to job creation here. So that's a real plus for the county. Agriculture is also a big piece of the economy.
It is 80%. A lot of the county has to do with agriculture. It's a significant part of the county's identity. Something to remember, though, is that's a large portion in the county, but a significant part of that is in timberland, right? So while we do have produce and row crops, it's mostly timberland that makes up the agriculture here. 254 farms, averaging 179 acres. So that's a lot of area devoted to agriculture. This map here shows your voluntary agriculture districts. And those areas in green are where those areas may be encroached upon development or face development pressures as time goes on. Health and well-being is very significant. As we know, this is a retirement county, right? The average age here is higher than the national and state average. Staying healthy is an important component of a quality of life. I think that means eating right, taking advantage of the healthcare that is here, growing that in the future is important, but also being able to get out and move more, right? Having access to recreational facilities for respite and exercise is very important, and leading to that is this particular map. One thing I want to note is what you're seeing today in these maps, we actually have an area on the website. You can go and see the maps that we've created up to this point, and as the process continues, we'll be updating and adding more maps. So you'll have access to that through this process. And one other thing to remember is that, the things change over time. So we'll be updating things. And so when you see it once, make sure you look at it later. With recreation, it's not just about the county system. Recreation's more than just what the county offers, right? There's private recreation, there's recreation for municipalities, there's recreation just at the beach. Go ahead. But important to note is what are the areas in the county that have gaps? So you may live near a park. This particular map, which is hard to see at this scale on this tiny screen, is attempting to show you your district and community parks that make up your county system. And those 2.5 and 2 mile circles are where people will more likely use that particular park. It's not likely you're going to drive across town to use a park, Maybe if you're in a league or something, you may do that. But for the most part, those are identifying where parks are, the areas they serve, and where those gaps exist. Go ahead. At a little bit finer level of detail, one of the things we like to look at is the 10-minute walk to park analysis. This information is available online via ParkServe. And what it's attempting to do is look at your population centers and identify where there are not parks within a 10-minute walk. And why is that important? It's an aging community. A lot of us are not driving as much, right? We need to be able to get out and walk to a park. It needs to have accessibility and connectivity. So we're looking at that. This particular map is just one little part of the county. It's the Leland, Navassa, Belleville area. The areas in red are those with the highest need, and then in orange and lighter orange, a lesser need, meaning they're probably closer to a park. But that's where we're at. It's at the very beginning of this study where we not just look at what you have, but also how accessible or how close are those facilities to where people actually live.
And as we begin looking at the developments, the future developments, both in parks and recreation and land use across the county, let's not forget one thing that is vitally important to us all, and that's natural resources. There are a lot of things that Brunswick County has that we don't build, we don't create. They are here for us naturally, and we all recognize that. We have a number of rivers, streams, tributaries, the waterway, the beach, wonderful natural resources. Wetland and protected areas that are protected, either animals, plants, forestries, game lands. We have CAMA setbacks, obviously, in those water use areas. These are vitally important. Meg showed a graph a few moments ago that related to some of those areas of conservation and how that encompasses a lot of our footprint. Keep those things in mind because this process intends on conserving and preserving that which we need to and that which we desire to as a community. So your input in that regard is especially valuable as well. It not only in the area of conservation, but realizing those areas that may not be accessible or developable for that matter. The floods, one of the zones that was shown on there was flood. We do have flood-prone areas. Stormwater was mentioned earlier, obviously with the rain we're having this evening. As we roll into the infrastructure slide, we also have to be mindful of that. Infrastructure is not critical in all places. We have to strategically place infrastructure that we create in manners to protect development, to enhance development, and forward thinking in those areas where we know we want to have the land development, park recreation development, those accesses and amenities happen. We have a great backbone in sewer and water facilities already in our major thoroughfares. The county has made a tremendous investment over the years in some of the infrastructure we have. And also, related to stormwater, we have to consider that. We all have been aware of what has happened in large rain events, much less what we see each year coming toward the end of summer and into fall when those storm events hit us just right on our south-facing beaches. So we have a lot of interest in making sure our infrastructure, electrical, broadband, those things, Brunswick Electric, AT&C, and all of those others that are involved have done a great job in helping us get to where we need to be to continue to operate, continue to live, and continue to enjoy what we do about Brunswick County. But keep these things in mind as you're providing additional input as well, because even as the county already has plans in place for expanding some of these infrastructures, and some of your cooperatives and other utilities already have plans in expanding, your input into those areas is valuable as well.
So as we bring all of this data together, some of the things that we're going to be doing is asking the question, what kind of development is coming to Brunswick County? Where should it go? Where should we support it? Where we would like it to be, and why? And so one of the things that we do when we bring all this data together and marry it with some of the things that we're hearing from folks about what their expectations are, what their ideas are, we can start to sort that out and figure out where are the best places, where are the most suitable places for different types of development to be located within the county. So this is a series of maps. They're just preliminary at this stage, but part of our analysis to look at how do real estate professionals look at land in terms of residential sites, commercial sites, and industrial sites. And so these maps sort of mimic the way they think. What are the factors that come into play when people are selecting sites for those various purposes? And we can see that, we can get a better sense of when we're thinking about the growth and the direction it's going to go and what form it's going to take. We can also be responsive to what the market's likely to do as well. So on the left, you see a map for residential. Everything that's green and yellow is generally where residential wants to go, and that's a fairly large area. You just saw on that map that Michael is presenting, it overlaps with some of those conservation areas as well. The commercial areas are naturally wanting to be along the corridors. They want the visibility and they want to be close to the population center, so you're seeing a lot of green and yellow in the corridors. The industrial is a little bit more flexible than the commercial. They're looking for those large sites with infrastructure and good access and so on. They want to be farther away from the residential development and other things that are just those incompatible neighbors. So it's a first way of looking at where is it likely to gravitate, and are there things that we want to do to make sure that for the uses that we're trying to support, that they go where they need to go and places where the county can support it with infrastructure and so on. So that gives you a little glimpse into that. So with that, again, this is not a comprehensive set of data at this point, just the highlights, but we're hoping it's enough to get the wheels turning, and maybe you have some questions or concerns you want to share, or some ideas that you already have in mind that you'd like for us to consider. So when you think about this plan going forward, we're at the beginning stages. And so it's a nice thing at this stage to hear from you, like, what do you think is important for us to know, knowing that we're in the beginning stages of this? What are your expectations? What should be true about the county 10 to 20 years from now? Is there something that you have in mind that you want to share that will really help us formulate what's the right direction and a reflection of the community's expectations in the future? So with that, I'm going to stop and invite questions for anybody who wants to volunteer, or even your ideas, and Mike and Jim and I will try to answer any, along with staff, any questions you might have. Any thoughts, concerns, questions? I know you have some, Gary. Okay, right here.
I heard a lot lately about the problems with the bridges between here and Wilmington. And how do we cut down on the traffic on that? Well, it seems like it's very obvious that there's two reasons to go to Wilmington: work and to shop. So we need to bring shopping to this side of the river. And outside of the big, in Charlotte, I don't see a lot of that happening. And also work, bringing more businesses into this area.
Right, so a greater land use mix. And that's sort of a question for the whole community, because a lot of people move here for exactly what Brunswick County is today. And then how much of different types of uses that you now find outside of the county should be located here. So I think that's an important question a lot of people are going to be asking as part of this process. What is that right land use mix here? What can the market support, but also what do you want? What are those trade-offs? So, anybody else?
Sure, why not? What programs do you currently have in process for providing for land preservation, farmland preservation, limiting building on agricultural land, and how you are funding it?
Right, so when it comes to agricultural land, you saw the slide that Jim presented that 75% of the large area that's devoted to agriculture is timberland. And so the other 25% is croplands, livestock, things like that. And that map he showed you shows voluntary ag districts. And that protects those farmers from the encroachment of new development to some degree. So when it comes to, with farming operations, there's noise, there are odors, things of that nature that the new residents next door don't really care to be a part of. And it really truly does encroach on their operations. So those voluntary ag districts help maintain and not keep the development at bay, but at least allows for those who are running these agricultural operations to do so successfully and keep a viable business. Those folks are also typically participating in what's called a present use value program. So when it comes to taxation, they are not taxed for the value of their property given their context. They're taxed based on the actual use, which is the agricultural use, so it keeps those costs down. So that's helping keep them on their farms as well. have not had a chance to get into the specific conservation groups that are operating in this area, and staff may be able to comment on that. But throughout North Carolina, I actually serve on a board in the western part of the state, but these conservancies and land trusts that work to set aside some very important lands, including some of those that are also natural resources. So you will see conservation easements that serve that purpose of protecting natural resources as well as agricultural uses. So imagine that is part of the mix here, or would be.
Okay, is there any purchasing of development rights from voluntarily from the farmers?
I am not aware of a purchase of development rights program.
I'm not aware that that's
Right now.
actually
Yeah.
in North Carolina yet.
Right.
But I can tell you there are lots of conservation easements in Brunswick County. There are lots of lands in conservation, some of them in agriculture like timbering, but there are lots and lots around the Town Creek area, all the way up through the Green Swamp, all the way north to Jennifer Creek and Waccamaw River. There is actually a whole belt now. You can kind of see it along some of these maps here, and I'll show you afterwards if you like.
Yes.
So we also encourage plan developments, it's exceptional.
Yeah, we do encourage them through our plan development process, if somebody's going to develop, to put away aside that land. And you can actually see, in one of the maps that I've seen in the last few days, you can see the conservation areas, and it actually shows up in some of the developments like St. James. It's because they're in conservation easements within those developments.
Right, so they're meeting their open space requirements and then permanently protecting that land. One thing about North Carolina is to do those types of development, counties do purchase development rights in North Carolina, but you have to go to the state and get the special legislation to do that. So if it's not already happening, that's something they'd have to seek. So, any other questions? Yes, sir.
I recently worked with the census, and I've only been here about 15 years, but I was shocked to see once you get off the main highway, there's no secondary roads. It's all dirt, sand, and so forth. Part of this is to upgrade the actual roads, transportation.
Right, so I'll tell you, and Kirsty can give more detail, but NCDOT is about to begin a comprehensive transportation plan at the beginning of next year to address the entire transportation network of Brunswick County. So it's not just the roads, but all things transportation, and will address alternative modes as well. So the nice thing is it's starting while this process is still going on, so the two processes can speak to each other. But Kirsty, do you want to add to that a little bit?
Yeah, at the beginning of the year, they should be kicking off the Brunswick County Comprehensive Transportation Plan. And on the planning website, we've added a transportation page to keep people updated. So just keep checking that out as we get information. DOT facilitates that transportation plan because they're in charge of transportation in Brunswick County. So we rely on them to facilitate. So as soon as we find out information, we're also putting major projects on there, such as the Carolina Bays project and the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge project, and it's something that we're doing this week. And we've been working on it with DOT and doing some question and answers, because we keep getting a lot of questions about a couple of transportation projects. They'll be on there too. So it's a good transportation resource.
If I may, North Carolina is very unique, as is Texas. The counties in North Carolina and Texas do not have oversight with respect to roadways.
Right.
So that being said, the infrastructural aspect is the reason why they're referring to DOT, because DOT is the one that would have to be at the front end of this thing to try to make those determinations. Except for with respect to municipalities, they do have oversight with them. So I get a lot of people call us when they say, hey, I need to get my road paved, or I need it maintained, or whatever. So we can't help you. And then you act like, well, you have to know so much. No, it's a different system in North Carolina and Texas. So just thought I'd pass that on.
Yeah, so the unpaved roads are probably private roads that are maintained by the people adjacent to them or at the end of them. It just depends on the situation. And they have private agreements in place depending on the road. Some of them are very old and the person down the street takes care of them. There's a really agreement in place, but that's probably what it is. DOT has paved a majority of the roads that I'm aware of in Brunswick County. I can't think of any other than one that's unpaved.
So you're saying that as soon as you get off the main road, those are all private?
Yeah, or town-owned. For example, the
I'm
city
talking
of
about-
Bowling Spring Lakes, there's a lot of unpaved
Right.
roads. Yeah, for private roads, most likely.
So, and as you said, it's unique. Well, I've been into a lot of states, and there seems like there's a lot of roads that are paved in other states. Who does that?
The counties do that in those jurisdictions. What the history is with North Carolina was during the Depression, as I understand it, many of the counties were going under. They were going broke because they could not support the roadways and the infrastructure that was required of them to do. And so what happened was there was some type of agreement with the State Highway Commission was created. And in the 1970s, it became the North Carolina Department of Transportation. But as Christian just said, a lot of these roadways you're referring to are privately owned. They are treated in the same respect as if it was in your backyard. So they may be communal because they may be serving a lot of people in an area, but they may actually, in fact, be privately owned or privately held properties, which we are barred statutorily from doing anything with them. So that either has to be within the constraints of the HOA, or the property owners in general, or they go through a process, bring it up to a certain standard to get DOT to be able to take it over, and that's a little bit arduous. But the bottom line is, that's kind of the reason why you see some of the things you see. This is a very fast-moving situation with this county, obviously. And so what we're doing, part of the reason we're here today, is to look into the infrastructural issues that were needed so we can step up to it and address that as we continue to move down the road. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. I mean, how do we get this better?
Well,
How do we help these
it is getting
people?
better. I mean, you can see it is getting better, but as I understand it, North Carolina Department of Transportation, it's a statutory aspect through the General Assembly. And the General Assembly they're not, and I may be mistaken in this, but my understanding is they're not proactive, they're reactive. So, it's like 211 right out here, should have been, in my mind, should have been paved 4-lane 10 years ago. But the thing is, however it shakes out, the problem is trying to get the funding for it and trying to ensure that we have the ability to do it, look at the best use. But we have to also have a real quantifiable perspective to know that those roadways are being used if they're going to allocate those funds. So I think that's one of the reasons why they are more or less not proactive, they're reactive, because you don't always know that road. Because you and I probably both know situations where they said, oh yeah, they're going to build it, they're going to come, and they never did. So we don't want bridges to nowhere in North Carolina. We want things that work. And so if you look at North Carolina, and if you look at I-140, you look at the total roads that have happened, you look at express lanes that have been happening in different areas, there's been a lot of changes in this state in the past 10 years. So they are aggressively going after it. It's just that you can't, it's not instant grits. You just can't do it immediately. But we are, and you are seeing changes, I would submit.
Okay. And one other, if I can add, I'm Mark, I'm a senior planner, I handle subdivision development. The way it's getting better also is we're not adding to the problem. So with recent changes over the last 15 years or so, any new private road that is subdividing 5 lots or greater has to have that minimum of road maintenance agreement or has to create an HOA to provide maintenance for those roads. So we're not adding to the issue. Yeah, there are some old roads that have been there for who knows how long, and ownership is questionable. Ultimately, we always recommend that the community get together and potentially formulate their own type of a road maintenance agreement or something like that.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Listen to the presentation and discussion. It calls to mind it certainly is a comprehensive process. It's a myriad of issues that requires this kind of effort in order to keep all those balls in the air and make sure none of them drop, because they are all in one measure or another important. I think that Brunswick County has a history of being proactive. Commissioner Cook mentioned the prior efforts. But if you look at things like the investment in infrastructure and those sorts of things, the planning efforts that have gone on, it has served us well. But the one thing that even your preliminary study will show you is that the pattern of growth in Brunswick County is well established, and it doesn't appear to be that there's going to be a change in that. And so this kind of effort, I think, is very valuable in taking an approach of managing the growth rather than trying to control the growth. It seems to me a lot of communities have a backwards view of trying to hinder growth as a way to manage it. I think this process is a far more positive approach to say, well, here are the issues, and this is what we can expect. Now, what's a sensible way, financially, environmentally, politically, and just practically to address that growth in a way that preserves the character, but also, of course, leaves plenty of room for new innovation and so forth. Because I think we all enjoy living in Brunswick County for some obvious reasons. But I think, in order for Brunswick County to thrive, and we want to preserve those characteristics, but in order for Brunswick County to thrive and be a place that attracts the kinds of good, shopping and services and things that are going to be needed, as you alluded to, medical is one example, but retail, a whole host of different industrial. In order to create jobs, you've got to be, ahead of the game. But I think the commissioners have shown a lot of leadership in being open to innovation and spending money where it was needed. And so I applaud this process, and it's just, to me, a continuation of the county's historical effort to be proactive and not putting their head in the sand, but saying, this is an issue that's going to be with us, and what's the best way to do it, and it is very comprehensive. I'm impressed with the work that's been done so far.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, when you see that level of population growth coming at you, you know that with that comes change.
Right.
And so embracing that and deciding what does that change look like so it's not decided for you. The county, like any growing area, is going to have its growing pains, but being able to be proactive, as you say, so that the change is what you want and it doesn't just happen to you is a good thing.
Yeah, if I may say something, I don't think it's said enough, and I don't know if it's the right thing to say it, but this is not playing games and patronizing anybody. This is being really straight with you. People that make up the county, either the county employees, the county staff, people you see in the room, people that come up and as consultants or whatever, these are the real deal. These are the experts. These are the people that really try to look at it. They are passionate about doing it right. They've got their name on it. They've got skin in the game. And so what I'm saying is they're not just trying to punch the clock and be able to move on and go toward retirement. They want to invest their lives in something that's valuable so they can look back and they know. You may never know the infrastructure that's been laid in. You may never know the water and the sewer and the roadways and the ordinances and all of these things that everybody standing here has had a hand in dealing with. You may never see it. But that's one of the things that makes an inherent value about this county work. Because as Mike Hart just said, and Mike, my gosh, Mike could write the book. A lot of people staying in this room could write the book. And they're very humble individuals. They never tell it. They never do anything to be able to bring attention to themselves. But the reality of this county that is so neat is it's comprehensive. And I go to other jurisdictions across this state in Elgin, South Carolina, and I can't say this county, that's county. But I have met recently with one in the internal area of the state, and both the county manager and the the Register of Deeds said to me, there is no leadership in this county. There's no leadership in this county. They won't step up. They won't be aggressive. They won't be progressive. They will not look into the infrastructural aspects. All they want to do is look good and go on to the next thing. And they operate from intimidation, top down. This is a collaborative, comprehensive, cohesive perspective as to the way you do it. And that's what you get. And the thing is, people live here for a period of time, we take it for granted. But the reality is there's a lot of work behind the scenes, but it's because the people standing here have a vested interest in it. They want to make sure it's right. Mike Hart is here. Mike has his footprints on a lot of these things that were done. Aaron Perkins, sitting back up there in Parks and Recs, he's an elected official also in a municipality. He understands these realities. There's people serving on all kinds of boards. So what I'm saying is, I think that's the secret sauce. That's the magic. That's the stuff that can't be on a bulletin board or be put in some kind of printed material, because that's the essence. It's because you've got people who have a vested interest in making sure that during their tenure, they're going to do the very best they can to work with everybody else with what they have to work with to make it the very best it can possibly be. And I don't know if this was the right time to say it or not, but I can tell you this, that when I look at stuff that's been done by these people, I have a very good thought about it because I know they worked hard. And I know, it's like they said, they said this to, and forgive me for digressing, but they did say this about Carter. When President Carter was in the Navy, he was assistant, I understand, to Nimitz. And they asked him, they said,
Did you do your best job? And he said, no, he didn't. And somebody said, well, why didn't you? You can look at it here. They're doing their best job. And there's no way they can forecast 20 years in the future. They don't have a crystal ball. They don't have it. But they can establish a blueprint that's dynamic enough, and is fluid enough, and is living enough to be able to say, this is where we are. It's just Mike Hargett just said, we kind of know where the growth is. And we can take on to that growth, and we can continue to come on. And just like you said regarding roads, I understand what you said about roads. But if you saw where it was 20 or 30 years ago, where it is now, you'd say, gee whiz. And I know that about people that's really been here 5, 10, 20 years. You sit there and go, good gosh, I can't believe it. I came out of a shopping center in Charlotte last night, and I said to my wife twice, I said, I can't believe this is Charlotte. It's coming, and you're in the right place at the right time. But we need your hands in this machine also to make sure we go the right way with the best way. And then later on, down the road, you better say, I have a hand in this. And that's, and I'm not right, I mean, that's what we're doing in this room, right, Mom?
Yes, sir.
So, I'll hush. Forgive me.
I'll also add that the planning department is a big message to people, no matter where we go, if we go speak to a club or wherever, or now online virtually. 60,000 people will relocate here in the next 20 years. So the question isn't, are they coming? The question is, where are they going to live? Where are they going to work? And where are they going to play? And that's what we need to address, because they're coming. We just have to figure out all the details.
Any other questions, thoughts, ideas? All right. Well, I want to take this opportunity to say thank you for coming out, because it is, as you can tell, a very important effort for the future of the county, and the fact that you've taken time out of your day to be here is so important. And we hope that you will stay tuned with the process. Jim mentioned this when we were trying to fix the PowerPoint, but this is the web address to the project website, and we hope that you will go there throughout this process and share this link with everybody you know. But within that, as Jim pointed out, is that survey link, and that's so critical at this point. There are also recordings of these meetings and presentations, so you can still use it with smaller groups. Folks that you know can tune in, watch it at their convenience, answer the survey, and as the project marches on, we'll be adding more materials to the website and more information about opportunities for public engagement. So we hope that you'll use this as that spot to check in periodically and continue to give feedback and stay in touch with the process, stay involved. And of course, Kirsty and Aaron are happy to field any questions and calls from you at any time if you have something to share and want to talk further about this. So, and there's contact information on the website as well. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it.